So far we have a lot of neat media elements, but they just play one right after another. Not very exciting, I must say. Unless you tell it otherwise, Director just moves the playback head from left to right without stopping. To control the score and add interactivity, we must use scripts or behaviors. Those two terms are used interchangeably in most instances. Behaviors are also considered director cast members, and Director comes preloaded with a library of ready-made behaviors for you to use right out of the box. You can access this library of behaviors by selecting Library Palette under the Window menu. This brings up the Library Palette, which is a listing of behaviors that come with Director. These behaviors are divided into categories, which you can see by clicking on the Library List button. There's a listing of all the categories that are contained in the Library Palette. The first thing we want to do is to tell Director to stop when it gets to a certain frame, so it doesn't just keep endlessly looping through our movie. The behavior that will let us do that is located under the Navigation category. So let's select Navigation. Okay. When Director gets to a certain frame, we want it to hold on that frame and not go anywhere. If we look at our selections, we see one behavior that might fit the bill, called Hold on Current Frame. We can view a description of this behavior by moving our mouse over the behavior. It says, hold on current frame, frame behavior, holds the playback head still. Well, that's what we want. So now we can add this behavior to our cast by dragging it from the Library Palette into the Cast window. Now, as you can see, this behavior has been added to our movie and is displayed in the Cast window. Let's move this aside. Okay. Let's use this behavior to pause the playback head just before it gets to our vector smiley face in the score. So let's navigate to that spot in our score. Okay, we have our bitmap, and this is where it changes over to the vector. So let's, to do this, we drag our behavior to the behavior channel at the frame just before the vector smiley face makes its first appearance. Okay, so we drag this right here. This is our last, the last place where we have our bitmap, so it'll stop there and we won't see our vector. Why don't we rewind and press play and see what happens? We'll let you look here. Let's close the Library Palette, get out of our way. Let's rewind our movie. And let's press play and see what happens. All right, the playback head is moving along. It gets to our behavior, and it stops. It doesn't go on to the sample vector image that we have on our stage. We can press stop. Okay, now this is all well and good, but eventually we'll want to continue on and see the rest of our movie. Fortunately, there is another behavior under the Navigation category that will fit the bill. Let's open our Library Palette once more by selecting Library Palette under Window. This brings up our Library Palette, and again under Navigation, we're going to try to find a behavior that will work. Now what we want our movie to go to the next frame when we click on a Next button. So when it gets to the end of the bitmap, it'll just pause there until we click on a button that says Next. So we want a behavior that will go to a particular frame when we click on something. So if we go here, it says Go to Frame X button. It says Use with graphic cast members, moves the playback head to the specified frame on mouse up. So basically when you click on something, that's what they mean by mouse up. It will go to a particular frame that you specify. It says use with graphic cast members, but we're going to use a button and it'll work on that as well. So if we drag this into our cast, it is now available to us within our movie. We can close the library palette. Um, Now, in addition to this behavior, we also need to make a button that says Next. So do you remember how to make a button? Okay, well, we go to Window. We go to Library Palette. Not Library Palette, I'm sorry. We go to Tool Palette. The Tool Palette provides us a list of tools that we can use. And the one that we're going to want to use is our Button tool on the Tool Palette. And if we select the button, first we must move our playback head to the beginning, because we want it to be inserted here at the beginning. Okay, we're going to make our button there, and it will last through this whole range because that's the default length that those are entered. So we select our button, we draw it. We enter our text. It says Next. We go to our cast. And when we look in our cast, by creating the button on the stage, it is automatically entered it into our cast window. And we can name this Next button just to help us out there. So now we have our button and we have our behavior. Well, how do we make our behavior actually work when we click on the button? Well, we added one behavior to the behavior channel, the hold on current frame behavior. So that's one place that you can put behaviors. Another place that you can put behaviors is to actually drag them onto a sprite in the score. Okay? Because we want it to go to a particular frame. When we click on the next button, we drag the go to frame behavior onto that button sprite in the score. This brings up a parameter dialog box that is associated with this behavior. When we add this behavior to this button, it wants to know information. It says go to frame X, and what X means is any number we specify. All right, we want to go to frame number, well, here's 25, 26, 27, 28, 29. We want to go to frame 29 so that the movie will progress from there. So we specify that here. We say OK. Okay. And now, let's move this down and a little bit out of our way. Oops. And let's get rid of our cast. Let's rewind and press play. We press play. It progresses to this point where we have told it to stop. Now when we click on the next button, our behavior tells the next button to send us on to frame number 29. So we click next, and voila, the transition happens and we go on to our vector cast member, and it just continues going through our score as before. Now, let's suppose we wanted to change this behavior that we just added to our button. Okay, we can see all the behaviors that are attached to a particular cast or a particular sprite by selecting the sprite in the score, and it lists here the behaviors that are attached. Go to frame X button is attached here, and if we wanted to, we could edit this behavior. We could make it go to a different frame, say, by clicking on the behavior inspector. And when we select our sprite first that has the behavior attached to it, and we click behavior inspector, it shows us that we have the go to frame X button behavior attached to that sprite. And by double clicking on it, it lets us change the parameters for that behavior. Let's change the parameters. Actually, let's click cancel for a moment. Let's find the next spot in the score past the vector. We could say go to frame 57. There's 55, 56, 57. So that way, instead of skipping to the vector, it will go straight to shape, and it will skip over this section. So let's go to our behavior inspector. We double click on the behavior and we say 57. We click OK. We close the behavior inspector. Now this behavior will go straight to frame 57 instead of frame 29 as it did before. So let's move our button a little bit here so that we can see that and our score at the same time. And let's open up our cast here a little bit so that we can see everything. Scroll down. Okay, now watch what happens when we get to our hold on current frame and then we click on the next button. We press rewind, press play, progresses on until it gets to where we've told it to stop, and then when we click on the next button, it goes all the way to sample shape. So it totally skipped over vector because we told this behavior to go to frame 57. Let's change that back, okay, to frame 29. If we select on the sprite and click on the behavior inspector, it lets us see all the behaviors that are attached. There's only one right now that's attached to the button. If we double click on it, it lets us change the parameters of that behavior. Let's change it back to 29 so it goes to the vector. Say OK. And then we close our behavior inspector. Press rewind. Press play. Again, it will go until it gets to the hold on current frame behavior in our behavior channel. When we click on our next button, it will now go to frame 29, which is the sample vector. And there's a transition in that frame, so we see that, and then it goes on to the vector. Now, let's do this for the rest of our movie, or at least for a few more of the movies. Let's go add this button, this next button. We can use the same button, and let's add it into our score for our sample vector. Okay, so that we will have a button there as well, so that when we get to vector, if we want, and we have added this here, we've added the button, let's position it down at the bottom left here, same place as before, and let's make it go to frame number 57, okay, so that when we get through with our vector, it will go on to our sample shape. So we select the sprite and the score, we drag the behavior, go to frame X, onto the sprite and the score that we want to respond to the click. It asks us where we want it to go when we click on that button, which frame is signified by X. And in this case, we want 57. We click OK. And now, let's see what happens. We say rewind, and we press play. And let's look at our score here. Alright, it's just gotten to the hold on current frame. So when we click on the next button, it does the transition to the next one. And there's the button. And the vector. Oh! Well, it just went on. It didn't wait for us. Why didn't it wait for us? I was going to click the next button, but it just kept on going. Why did it keep on going? Because we didn't tell it to hold on the current frame. How do we tell it to hold on the current frame? Well, we drag the hold on current frame behavior into our behavior channel at the frame where we want it to stop. So it will go here through the sample bitmap. It'll go to the next button. It'll stop at the hold on frame, and it will go to the next section here, sample vector, when we click on that next button. Then we'll see the sample vector along with the next button, and when we get to the end of the sprite span for the vector, it will stop because we have a hold on current frame, until we click on the next button, in which case it will then go on to sample shape. Okay, so we press rewind, we press play. We could press next now. We don't have to wait for it to get to the end. Now it's going to jump to here. Okay, we're at our sample vector, and it's now paused at that frame because we put hold on current frame there. Okay. Now let's show you how to go back, say, in the score. Suppose when we get to sample vector, we want to be able to go back to sample bitmap instead of going next. And let's go next just to see that we can. That will then send us on to the sample shape. Okay, that sent us on to sample shape, which is where we told it 57. But let's suppose that instead of having this button just go next, let's create another button that will go back. Okay. So if we select our next button, okay, and we make sure our playback head is set at this at where we're going to enter our button, because we're going to drag it onto the stage here. If we drag it onto the stage, now we have a next button. Well, we don't really want a next button, do we? We want a back button. So if we select this button and press delete, okay, that removes it from our score. Let's make another button. If we want to, we can just copy the next button. We say edit, copy cast member, and then we select the next available slot. We say edit, paste, and it pastes a copy of the next button. We can change the name of this. Let's change the name to back button, but it still says next on the actual button, so we need to double click on it, which brings up an edit window where we can change the name to back. Now when we close this, it's updated in our cast window. Now we have a next and a back button. We select the place in the score where we want to add the back button, and we drag this cast member onto our stage there, and it appears in our score. We now want to add a behavior to it, the go to frame X behavior, to this sprite. We already have one attached to our next button, as we can see by selecting the sprite. We see go to frame X there, but our back button does not have a behavior attached to it. So if we click on go to frame X and we drag that onto our back button, then we're attaching that behavior to that sprite, and we want it to go to frame number 1. We want it to go back to the beginning of our movie because it's a back button. So we click 1 and we say OK. Now let's rewind and see what happens. Rewind, play. Okay, we have our next button. It gets to the hold on current frame and it stops there. We click on the next button, go to our transition, which goes to our next frame. Now it's come to the end of that span, and we can even see that better if we just drag this over a bit. In fact, let's move this up here. And we can move this over. Okay, so it's paused on the hold on current frame. Okay. Now when we click the back button, what happens? It will go to frame 1, because that's where we told it to go. Hey, there we go. It's gone back to frame 1. And again, it's going to progress from left to right. It's going to keep doing that until it gets to hold on current frame. We click next. It goes through that transition because we have a transition in that frame. And then it just keeps progressing until it gets to another hold button, or hold on current frame, behavior. And again, we could click on back, or we could go on to the next one. Let's do next. And that just goes on to our sample shape, where we haven't added any buttons. Now, let me just tell you that you can attach these behaviors, or this behavior anyway, to many different kinds of sprites. It doesn't have to be a button. We could make a text cast member or a graphic cast member, and we could add this behavior to that cast member sprite in the score. For instance, I could add one to, in fact, we could even add it to our simple shape if we wanted to, our sample shape. We could select the shape and click on the cast and drag the go to frame X onto our sample shape. And we could also tell it to go back to 1. So if we miss the opportunity to go back there by clicking on the sample shape, that will take us back to 1. We say OK, close our cast window, let's drag this up a little bit, and let's move left a little bit, and press rewind and play. Alright, there it goes. It's going to get to the end of the bitmap and it's going to pause. We say next. Alright, and it goes to the next one. It progresses on until it gets to the hold on current frame behavior, and then it stops. If we click next, we'll go on to the sample shape. If we click simple shape, it goes all the way back to the beginning, and it just finally got back to the hold part. So that's how you add the two most useful, probably, behaviors that you're going to find in the behavior palette, the library palette, and those are the hold on current frame and the go to frame X behaviors. You will use this in your assignment, and we'll explain that in a bit.